All right, I'd like to call to order the Wednesday, October 8th, 2025 Administrative and Finance Committees. It is currently 5:31. Start with roll call. Mike Mielke is excused. And next would be Kathleen Lohendorf.
Here.
And myself, Stephen Knott, am present. Next is consideration and action on minutes from the previous meeting. I'll move to approve.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Next is public input. Anyone wishing to provide public input is limited to 3 minutes. If you would like to provide public input, please provide your name and address. First call for public input. Second call for public input. Do you see anyone online? Amanda, do you see anyone online that's trying to maybe raise a hand or anything? Okay. Third and final call for public input. Public input is closed. Moving on to the next item. Now with Mike not here, I am his alternate for finance as well, so I'll be running both sections tonight. I would like to move number 14 under finance, which is the presentation from Dana Investments on third quarter investments, up next instead of what is normally number 4, the recruitment update, simply because I don't need to have that person hanging around when we go through all these ordinances. Kathleen, do you have any issue with that?
Me.
Okay, so let's go to item number 14, the Dana presentation.
So here tonight is Dave Mazza from Dana Investments, and he is going to present on our third quarter investments and kind of on our portfolio since we began this adventure with Dana Investments in 2023. So I'll hand it over to Dave.
All right, thank you. I am Dave Mazza from Dana Investments. I have my best Milwaukee Brewers tie on. Hopefully give them some better luck than they were already having this evening. But I think everybody's got a copy of our handout. And first, I'll just thank the city for their trusting Dana with their investments. And then I'll move right on to page 2. And like Sabrina said, this page gives you a recap of the performance since we started this back in April of 2023. Since we've been investing the city's funds, the city has earned over $527,000 in investment income. The portfolio has grown to where it currently stands at $10.1 million. And it's made up of all AAA rated U.S. government and government agency securities. So it's very safe and very liquid. You can see the breakdown of the different types of bonds. And then at the bottom of the page, the good stuff, that's the performance year to date, 3.4% year to date over the last 12 months. Of about 4.3%. And since we've been doing this in April of 23, over 5.1%. So the city's investments have done very well. The current yield to maturity on the portfolio is right around 4.9%. So it continues to perform very well and is positioned to continue to do so. Page 3, just a little bit economic update because it helps frame how the portfolio is positioned. You can see in the top right box there, the 2.94% for CPI. That's the inflation number that the Fed watches. Their other part of their dual mandate is in the bottom middle box is payroll, and 2.94 for inflation is a little high for the Fed. They'd like to see it between 2 and 2.5, but monthly payroll at 22,000 was a little low. That's usually between 50 to 75,000. So with that weak payroll number, the Fed finally cut rates this in September for the first time in a long time. And they're on path to probably cut 2 more times this year. And if not twice this year, at least once. So they're trying to juggle that, keep inflation in check, but also keep payroll up there. So that's the dance that they have to do right now. So if you look, skipping to page 5, you can see this is rates where they were at the end of the year is the yellow line. And then the blue line is where rates currently are. So the front end of the curve, you can see over at that 1 month number, that's really when the Fed cuts rates. That's really what gets affected. So as soon as the Fed cuts rates, that the very far left side of the graph goes down quickly. And so will other short rates like the Wisconsin LGIP. But you can see what the market has priced. You can see how low interest rates are. The market is pricing in a lot more Fed rate cuts. So that's the path, and that you can see that on page 6. This is what they call the Fed dot plot. This is where rates have been, and those dots in the shaded area, the gray shaded area, is where the Fed expectations are. The Fed would eventually like to get rates down to around 3.1%. And that's their dot plot says they'll get there maybe some point late 2026. So the last thing I'll end with is if you look at page 9, this is a list of the securities in the city's portfolio. And as I said, the portfolio is well positioned to take advantage of the rates where they are now and hopefully hang on to those rates. Rates will start to drop, but we've got the portfolio positioned at a pretty high interest rate right now. Like I said, 4.9%. So even if rates do drop, we're a little longer out on the curve. So the city's portfolio should continue to pay off more interest or pay more interest even when the rates get cut, because we're not on the very short end like the LGIP. We're invested a little bit longer.
Okay, so back to page 2, I just have one question, tracking everything else. Where you got the total portfolio with income of $527,463. That is from when to when as far as the investment income?
That is from when we started managing in April of 2023.
Okay, so there has been discussion amongst this council about what is the proper amount of interest-bearing surplus accounts, whether or not we have too much, what have you. And this is a good case of explaining to our citizens who have questions on this, on why it's important for us to, well, one of many reasons why it's important for us to have interest-bearing surplus accounts. That's $527,463 that we do not have to tax the citizenry in order to spend that amount of money. I know it'll never happen, but I've always said, I wish we had $100 million in surplus and we wouldn't have to tax anyone anything because we just live off the interest income. So just to, I guess, put my own, comment out there, reference the interest income on why it's really important for us to have these accounts. If we eliminate them or significantly reduce them, of course, it'll have other impacts too, everything from bond ratings and multiple other areas. It also reduces our income to the city, and now we'll have to make up that amount of money somewhere else. So just my 2 cents on that. So thank you very much for those numbers. Is there anyone else who has any questions or comments? Yes, Sabrina.
Thank you. I guess I do have a follow-up question to that, Dave, and maybe I'm just not understanding the 2 graphs the same, but still on page 2, where it says account activity 4/10 to 9/30, is that our That would be our 2-year span of income, right? Whereas the other graph would just be the current year income.
No, these are both since the inception, since
Okay,
April of 23.
okay. I just would have thought that the income would have matched the investment income over in the other graph.
Oh, no, you are right. That is
Okay.
the year-to-date income.
Okay, I was gonna say, I'm pretty sure that is year to date.
Yeah, because the total gain since we've had it in April 23 is 1.1 million.
Thank you.
So that makes your,
What I thought I'd heard before, so
Yeah.
thank you. So 1.1 million that we've earned off of interest of these accounts that we don't have to charge citizens for if we were to spend it. So the 527, 463 is year to date.
that's
Got it.
year-to-date, yes.
Yeah, that's outstanding, by the way. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, Kathy.
Yeah, I'd agree. It's definitely very impressive. I mean, it's what, 18 months, 1.9, or $1.1 million, it's like $300,000 every 6 months, basically is what we're earning roughly. Yeah, no, and I appreciate the longer term investments. It looks like we, even if, like you said, if the Fed changes the rate, we're not going to be long-term impacted as negatively, hopefully. Yeah. My only other comment that I would have is that, it's great for us to have the investment income as long as it's not just gonna sit there and only be that, so that's all.
Sabrina.
The only other thing I would add is that the way we do have our portfolio set up, I work with individuals at Dana Investments anytime they want to do any type of change in our investments. So if they want to sell a security and purchase a different security, they do send me a document where I can accept or reject. And I always am looking at that credit rating on whether I decide to move forward or not, but they've been really good to work with. And I usually follow their advice since they know a lot more about investments than I do, but I am always double checking to make sure that the credit rating is where it's at. So,
Yeah, and anytime our yield is exceeding the inflation rate, that's what success really is. And obviously, we are doing that right now. So again, thank you very much. I appreciate what Dana's doing for us. Thanks. Cool.
Thank you.
thank you.
All right, anything else?
I don't have anything. Does anyone else have anything?
Okay,
Right.
thank you for the
Thank you.
time.
Yep, thanks, Dave.
All right, we will now move on to what is listed as item number 4. Obviously, it's number 5. From this point forward, add 1 when I'm going to go off the numerical list on the sheet. But obviously, it's item number 4. Recruitment update from Human Resources Director Amy Franzen.
Yes, good evening. So currently in the month of September, we did fill one of our regular positions, our planning associate. So that fills 117 of our 118 regular hires, employees in the city. We've got 1 vacancy currently, and we expect to have that filled next week.
Cool. Any questions? All right, moving on to item number 5. Consideration to rescind and remove City of Onalaska Policy 1.05, Residency, Fire, and Emergency Personnel. I will turn this over to Chief Luddy.
Yeah, thank you. Just to give a little background on where this came about is one of our firefighters was looking at purchasing some property, which looking at it now would have fallen outside the 15-mile boundary around the city limits. Upon looking at the policy, our firefighter asked me, does that include our jurisdictional boundary? Because that's what the policy reads. In our current jurisdiction right now, since we're under contract with the town of Onalaska, that is our total jurisdiction, and the place this person wanted to move to would have fallen within the 15 miles of the town's jurisdictional limits. So with that being said, after reading the policy myself, I wasn't 100% sure on how to answer that question, so I did forward it off to Amy and Rick to try to get an answer on that. So after we all 3 conferred, plus Amanda also was down there to talk about this policy. After looking at it, we all kind of agreed that, the policy wasn't real clear. We also wondered, if we had another township or lost the town of Onalaska, what would happen to those who may have been living outside of the city's 15-mile radius at that time. This policy only applies to the Onalaska Fire Department. We also discussed recruitment retention, looking around at other fire departments, especially directly to our north and directly to our south. Neither of those are enforcing any sort of residency. And we're all fighting over the same pool of candidates right now for firefighter positions. So we do think that this does affect our recruitment retention of our firefighters. And then looking at different other fire departments around the state, I know when I was in Marshfield, we loosened ours to a 30-mile radius from 15. And talking to fire chiefs and different firefighters around the state, this is kind of something that's going by the wayside. 15 miles kind of used to be the standard. It is in state statute that you may impose a 15-mile radius. But many fire departments are going away from this just due to recruitment retention purposes. We know why the 15-mile radius is in place. It's to keep your firefighters close in case there is an emergency for callback. However, in contract and in policy, we don't have anything to force a firefighter to come in, even if they live a block away. So that's kind of the flip side of the coin, the other argument to this. With the reasons I mentioned, due to clarity, equity, recruitment, retention, just kind of the industry practice, all four of us talked about it, and we decided it would be a good idea to just rescind this policy. So that's kind of where I stand. I'll take any questions you have.
I move to approve the rescinding of City of Onalaska Policy 1.05 Residency, Fire and Emergency Personnel.
A second.
So, thanks, Chief. Yeah, if recruits far exceeded our vacancies, maybe we could be more restrictive. Although I'm still not sure I would support it even then. Based on what you said, you can't make anyone come in even if they're a block away. But I would think we'd always want the best possible candidate myself. And then combine that on top of the fact that the leadership does not support this policy. They're the subject matter experts of how to run a fire department, and I'm going to usually defer to that as well. So, I definitely support this.
Agreed.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? All right. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you.
Item number 6, ordinance 1831-2025 to amend section section 7.01.12 of Title 7 of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Onalaska related to issuance and revocation of licenses. Is this going to go to Katie or
Nope, I'll take it.
to Amanda? Okay, go ahead.
So this is just sort of a little bit of a cleanup. When we were going through some of the ordinances, we actually realized that we didn't necessarily have master ordinance templates here at City Hall since our code lives online now. And so that was a project that we worked on. And in doing that, we just noticed a few different issues across the ordinances. One of those issues was that this list was a little bit outdated. As you can see, we added about 4 licenses or permits that generally the city clerk's office is generally issuing without coming to council. And so we wanted to make sure that this list was correct in the ordinances. And so these are sort of routine licenses and permits that Joanne reviews and that she just issues without council approval. If for any reason she did not give approval of one of these licenses, the individual would have the ability to appeal that to common council. So there is still an appeal process. But again, these are sort of very routine, have very clear expectations for what you need to do in order to get them. And so as to not hold up people from doing business, et cetera, Joanne typically issues these ones.
I'll make a motion to approve ordinance 1831-2025.
A second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. You said aye, right? We would, we would,
Sorry, we
we
said
would
it
need
stays the
two.
same.
Oh, all right. Next is item number 7, ordinance 1832-2025 to amend section 2.04.13 of Title II, the Code of Ordinances of the City of Onalaska related to the Board of Zoning Appeals. And this is going to be you again, Amanda?
They're all gonna come to me and then I may kick one or two somewhere else. So this one came up because there seemed to be a question. We had a vacancy on BOZA. There was some confusion over alternate members. And so I ended up sort of deep diving this into the statutes, which then led to a review of all our boards, committees, and commissions and resulted in 3 ordinance changes. But basically, our current ordinance does not follow state statute. State statute is very clear as far as who sits on the Board of Zoning Appeals, and even goes so far as to statutorily set out that there are 2 alternates that have to have staggered 3-year terms, and they should be designated as an alternate 1 and an alternate 2 each year. And so basically, we just updated section A to basically align verbatim with the statute.
I'll move to approve ordinance 1832-2025.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Item number 8, ordinance 1833-2025 to amend section 2.04.21 of Title II of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Onalaska related to the Police and Fire Commission.
Yes, so this one, again, if you read the statute, specifically states that the mayor shall annually, the first week of May, appoint 1 member for a term of 5 years. And I didn't include it in the ordinance because I didn't necessarily know that it needed to be in here, but it actually says directly to the Secretary of the Police and Fire Commission. And so when you read that and you consider that broader statute, and then you compare it to other quasi judicial boards, like for example, the CDA, it actually acknowledges in the CDA that the council should confirm those appointments. With that lacking in the Police and Fire Commission and how very specific they are with respect to the first week of May and directly to the Secretary of the PFC, we felt it was the statute's intent that that not be a person that was appointed by the Common Council. And so we've amended the ordinance to reflect that.
I'll move to approve ordinance 1833-2025.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Item number 9, ordinance 1834-2025 to amend section 2.04.31 of Title II of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Onalaska related to the general provisions regarding meetings and public notices.
We currently have an ordinance that says that all boards, committees, and commissions must fix a regular date, time, and place for its meeting. We do have just a handful of board, committee, or commissions that meet on an as-needed basis, and so we just wanted to carve out that there is an exception for those handful. For example, Long Range Plan Commission only meets when there's an issue related to Long Range Plan Commission, and so they don't meet at any regular fixed time, date, or place.
I'll move to approve ordinance 1834-2025.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Number 10, ordinance 1835-2025 to amend chapter 8 of Title 6 of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Onalaska related to the city cemetery.
So the bulk of the changes in here were to basically address our new expansion, including the columbarium and the niches that are available for sale. And so in a few places, we do designate that the rules may be just a little bit different in how they're treated, or the processes to purchase or transfer may be not quite the same, but we basically have gone through the entire code and just updated it to make sure that we're including those niches and the columbarium as far as our ordinances go. We do also have a separate handbook that we look at related to the cemetery that has rules in it as well as the ordinance. And so we also compared the two and made a few small tweaks to make sure they align. And then just did maybe a little cleanup for spelling or grammar errors.
I will move to approve ordinance 1835-2025.
Second.
Under discussion, I do have several questions and concerns. I suspect I'm going to be offering a motion to amend at some point. Starting off with page 17. So this is actually going to bring Jared into this conversation as well. At the very top of the page, 6.08.14 care of lots in columbarium, and where it talks specifically about the distribution of funds, starting with 80% for the cemetery operating, 10% for perpetual care, and 10% for capital improvements in the cemetery for each lot. And then the next one says, this is in the red portion, for each saleable niche, it's 60% for perpetual care and 40% for capital improvements. I'm wondering if this might be an area we might want to address, Jared, because I know it's come up several times over the last several years. We aren't putting enough into the perpetual care fund to where if we fill out the cemetery, it's going to be able to take care of itself in perpetuity.
So if you look at 6.0814A is for grave sites, grave lots, and it's been the 80, 10, and 10 for many, many years, as long as I can remember. Part of that 80, 10, 10 is how we function the cemetery now. If you change more of that to perpetual care, you're going to run the cemetery in a deficit. So our budget can't sustain moving more of that funding to the perpetual care account. That was part of the reason we went to item B under 6.0814 for the columbarium. It's a new revenue stream, and that's the reason that we wanted to put that into the perpetual care and not have it as part of the operations of the cemetery.
Okay. It's kind of a short-term versus strategic, long-term financial perspective, I guess. If we were to adjust any of the percentages where we lower the actual operating percentage, what that would mean is that more would come out of the general, I guess, capital improvements budget, correct?
No, right now the cemetery operates as a enterprise fund. So there is a fund balance. I know Sabrina would probably have that, that fund balance, exactly what it is. But if the cemetery, right now the cemetery budget is situated that we operate close to a net zero at the end of the year, but that all depends on how many graves we sell, how many graves we open, things like that. Some years we end up with a deficit, some years we end up with a surplus, just depending on what our sales are. With that, we also look at the long-term, care of the cemetery and everything. When we look at the budget, we're fairly conservative with how many graves we think we're going to open and sell. But after the end of the year, I don't know what the 5-year running average is, but we haven't been making money at the cemetery like 10,000 a year for the last 5 years in a row and building that balance up. And part of it also is if the operating budget does end at a surplus, it builds up the enterprise fund balance. So in a way, you're building up reserves either way, but just not specifically designated for the perpetual care account.
So if you have excess at the end of the year, it goes into the perpetual fund.
It does not go into the perpetual care fund, but goes into the fund balance. So the cemetery has a fund balance that basically is their operating cushion. So to make sure that we have, I guess, Sabrina, if you can explain it better, but I mean, I think, it's like having your savings account and then, if we operate in a negative 1 year, our balance goes down. If we operate positive, same as the water and sewer and stormwater, they all have a fund balance also that changes from year to year.
So if we have a decrement, where does that money come from on any given year?
So that would come from the fund balance in the cemetery fund.
Which the long-term impact is probably the perpetual care, right? I mean, that's what the fund balance is there for, or?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So it sounds
It's
like it's
all,
6 of one, half dozen the other, how you're gonna play this game. So, yeah. Okay. Mayor.
I think I will want to go on to say too, when we decided to move forward with the columbarium, we did have really lengthy discussions about the price and how to divide that up. We spent quite a lot of time discussing that because it is an unknown and we don't know how many we're going to sell. Well, we know how many we're going to sell for the first one, but we intend to have future ones and we may have to do adjustments. But as we embark on this first columbarium, we'll see how it goes. Understanding that we may have to make adjustments, after this first one sells.
Okay, so Sabrina and Jared, are you both confident this is the best possible solution as we move forward?
My recommendation is to leave the grave sales where they're at 80-10-10 and have the 60-40 for the niches. Unless, if you do anything different, you're going to build up a perpetual care fund and you're going to operate the cemetery at a deficit, so.
Okay. You agree?
I would agree.
Okay. Did you have any question on that before I move on? Okay.
That makes sense to me.
Next one I have is under 6.08.15, rules for visitors. Now, the first comment I'm going to have on this might seem a little nitpicky, but I just think it's more defined. Where on paragraph A, you say the cemetery will be open to visitors between the hours of 1/2 hour before sunrise and 1/2 hour after official sunset. There's actually a term for, I think, where you're trying to go with this, that is approximately, give or take, a couple of minutes each side, about 30 minutes. And it's called civil twilight. And if you look up any kind of light data, on any site, that's going to be there. And I'm wondering if we just do it to where the cemetery will be open to visitors between begin civil twilight and end civil twilight, and leave it at that, because that data is available and it's defined. I guess the real boring definition is it's between 0 and 6 degrees below horizon after sunset. But what that means, and I guess this is, I suspect this is where you're trying to go with it, is up until civil twilight, you see better with your own eyes than you would even with like night vision devices. That's within that 1 minute of civil twilight is where you suddenly can see well. It's amazing if you just sit outside and watch it. Hunters know this very well. Suddenly it's like, boom, you can see, or vice versa, depending if it's begin or end. So I guess what my recommendation would be, a real minor thing, is just changing it to say begin civil twilight and end civil twilight, as opposed to trying this 1/2 hour before and after sunset. I don't know. What do you think? I'm open for discussion on it.
My comment would be for just a layman that maybe doesn't have a cell phone and we're trying to put it on like a sign. It may make more sense just to do the 30 minutes or a 1/2 hour.
Oh.
I haven't heard that term before. So
Okay. Would he not, he or she, would a citizen still need to know when sunrise or sunset is? Because you can't tell by looking. I mean, you can sort of get there within, give or take, maybe 5 minutes on either side, but you wouldn't really know.
I don't know. I guess the idea is that we don't want people there after dark, right?
Correct, and that's why I was going, choosing the
Yeah.
civil twilight. Have you heard?
I don't necessarily disagree with the
Yeah.
language of it.
Yeah. Have
I'm
you?
good either way. However we want to define it is fine with me. I just think, I think the 1/2 hour is going to the layman's going to be more known to the layman that is out there than civil twilight. I think your definition is correct. And I'm sure if I looked it up that, it's correct, but 98% of the people aren't going to know what civil twilight is.
Oh, okay. Yeah, Rick.
And I would just chime in, I would agree. I think that the terminology, while I don't disagree with what you're saying in regards to the definition, in the day now where everybody basically carries a cell phone with them, if they wanted to know what a 1/2 hour before the official sunset time, they'll whip out their phone and their phone will tell them when sunset is. So that might be an easier way for them to gauge when they need to be out of there versus using the terminology just because they may not know what that actually means. That would be my only thought.
Okay. I'm hearing that. Just leave it as is. I mean, that's something I'm going to die on my mountain for. I think it's more precise to go what I was saying, but that's all right. All right.
Don't disagree. Thank you for the education.
Yeah. And then lastly, and this one I do think is an issue for sure, is under 6.08.15E, where it says firearms shall not be allowed in the cemetery except in conjunction with military funerals and military honors as part of the approved event. At all other times, firearms, weapons, bows and arrows, slingshots, and other like articles shall not be allowed. I think we're going to run into supremacy clauses of the state on this one. state law, to my understanding, of course, I'm going to defer back to the attorneys and maybe they need to come back by common counsel on this, is that whether I know this can be a very emotional issue, but ultimately got to take it away. It's what's the law? And right now, I believe, from my interpretation of law, and I am not a lawyer, is that they are allowed. And I am 100% convinced personally, I could be wrong, that they're definitely allowed if you keep them in your vehicle. Specifically, the state law on that one says that they are prohibited from government buildings and school grounds. Otherwise, they are allowed in your vehicle. That's pretty much how it reads. So I don't know if you just want to defer until next week to do more research or.
Yeah, my initial review while we've been sitting here is that this may be okay, but I would like some more time to look into it.
Okay. All right. Yeah. So if we could, on that. So I guess I'll wait for amendment. I still got one more thing, I think. Yeah. Okay. Last item I have for comment is it would probably fall under item 6.08.16 interments and disinterment. Item E, it might become an F. I don't know. Basically looking towards page 19, because this would be an addition if we determine we should do it. And I'm wondering if this might be something we might want to put in under the interment of ashes and monuments, having another paragraph, actually interments on columbarium, niche, and ossuarium, that we might have an F that says, and this is in compliance with state law too, spreading of ashes on city property is prohibited. And then, and there's reasons for that, by the way, folks. There's high sodium content in cremated human remains, and it impacts both soil and plants, and it especially impacts water, which is why the EPA says that you cannot spread ashes of human remains within 3 nautical miles of land, because it does not dissolve in water. It stays there. I mean, you think about it, if you bury bones, for instance, 1,000 years later, you can dig them up. It's no difference if they're crushed into small bits. They're still going to be there for a very long time. They don't just dissolve. So I don't know, and maybe it should be somewhere else since this is under cemetery.
Think we had it in there. I
Did I miss?
don't remember
Under
where.
E10, it has no cremains shall be scattered on private lots or on cemetery property.
Where'd you find that, Joanne?
Private lots is allowed by state law. That's what I read, as long as it's your own private property.
E10. Yeah.
I think it means cemetery lots, not like your personal property.
Oh, yeah. So that's cemetery lots.
Cemetery
Yeah.
are privately owned.
Yeah. So, yeah, is this somewhere, we should capture that somewhere else? I know it's something that is not unpopular. I know it's one of the most popular places to spread ashes is actually Disneyland, which is to me kind of bizarre. They actually have to close down the water rides quite often for that and do a cleanup. So, yeah, by quite often, I mean several times a year. Yeah, isn't that? Yeah, I agree. It's creepy, but it happens all the time, so, yeah. So that was just an observation, and this might not be the right ordinance to capture it.
I think the no cremains should be scattered on private lots or on cemetery property covers it, because cremains is the legal term for ashes. That's what we call ashes, is cremains. So,
Well, I'm talking about anywhere on city property. No,
anywhere on city property that.
Yeah.
I wouldn't put,
And
yeah.
letting them know waterways are totally in this area forbidden. There's nowhere in this area that's 3 nautical miles from land.
I mean, I think because this is very specific to the cemetery, like this is appropriate here. We can look through the rest of the ordinances to see if we have that somewhere else.
Okay.
And maybe we can answer that question at council. But I think that if we wanted that, I don't know that I would put it in the cemetery ordinance. I would probably put that somewhere else,
Okay.
like in the parks ordinance, maybe.
Yeah.
Okay. That's the last of my comments. Did you have any? Okay. So I'd like to make one, amendment. Amendment is to approve ordinance 1835-20-25 with the understanding that a common council, city council will provide a further interpretation of 6.08.15E, firearms on cemetery property.
Sorry, a second.
You second? Okay. There's only two of us. Okay, so this is a vote on the amendment. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed, motion passes. Now a vote on the actual initial motion. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed, motion passes. Okay. Next, all right, item number 11, ordinance 1836.-2025 to annex land located in the southeast quarter of the southwest quarter, section 29, township 17 north, range 7 west, from the town of Onalaska to the city of Onalaska, Wyland ELH Trust. And over to Katie.
Thank you. This is an annexation petition to allow for a new residential subdivision. It was unanimously approved at the Plan Commission meeting in September.
I'll move to approve ordinance 1836-2025.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Item number 12, ordinance 1837-2025 to amend chapter 2 of title 12 of the Code of Ordinances of the city of Onalaska related to public nuisances.
Yeah, so I did throw a memo in there that sort of goes over the main elements that are changing in the public nuisance ordinance. As some of you may be aware, we've had just a few handful of sort of extreme property maintenance cases that the city has been dealing with for a few years now, probably 4 or 5. And in order for us to get legal compliance from a homeowner who will not, cooperate with us, we end up going to civil court, and it's quite a process. There are a lot of municipalities out there that allow for non-summary abatement, especially when we're dealing with sort of garbage, junk, mostly exterior type issues where we don't need to go into the property. We just need to clean up the outside of the property, which would just let the city go ahead where we lack compliance, and we give, sufficient notices to clean that up without needing to go get a circuit court order every time. And so we made some changes to reflect that. We actually had the process in place in our ordinance, but we lacked sort of some of the clarity on what qualifies as, junk or excessive junk and things like that. And so that's why you'll see expanded definitions of accumulation of refuse, noxious weeds, which are defined elsewhere, but Katie can talk about as well, prohibited animals. We've recently had a lot of issues with prohibited animals in the city in a couple different cases. And so we wanted to get that in there. We just did a little bit of cleanup in a couple other areas. Like I mentioned, wildlife, we get a lot of questions about people or people calling in about their neighbors feeding squirrels. You cannot feed squirrels in the city of Onalaska. That's technically in our ordinance, but it's only in there in the sense that we refer to the DNR code. And so we just wanted to make that very clear for people and be able to say, nope, very clearly right here, it says you can't feed squirrels, rabbits, and these other sort of vermin that people sometimes get attached to. But that's the majority of the changes. If anybody has any questions, Katie or I would be happy to answer them.
Kathy and Stephen, do you both have a copy of the memo that Amanda referred to? Because it did come out a little bit later. Yep. Okay.
Yeah, it's in
Okay.
yeah. I'll move to approve ordinance 1837-2025.
A second.
Discussion. Go ahead.
Just had a question of the, if we could get a definition of noxious weeds on record?
You said of noxious weeds?
Yes, noxious weeds.
Which
In this, it's item, was stricken as item 9 and looks like it's a secondary part of item 9 under noxious odors and the noxious weeds.
So there's an entire statute dedicated to what a noxious weed is.
Is there?
There
Okay.
is. I can read it, or if you have it in front of you, Katie, and you want to read it.
Yes, so this refers directly back to our property maintenance code. So it's section 12.01.23. So there's state statutes, and the state statutes have specific lists of those noxious weeds. And because that list is ever changing, it behooves us to not actually list out those species. So that we have an ability, but we talk about, there's a difference between noxious weeds, nuisance weeds, and prohibited and restricted invasive species. So our ordinance actually covers all of that. And it all goes back to state statutes.
Perfect. Thank you.
Any other discussion? All those in favor? Aye? Was that an aye?
Yes.
Okay. Opposed? Motion passes. Next is item 13, ordinance 1838-2025 to amend section 7.04.21 of Title 7 of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Onalaska related to duties and responsibilities of pet owners.
Yes, so as I alluded to on public nuisances, we have had some issues with prohibited animals in the past couple of years in the city of Onalaska. In both of those cases, we also had issues related to adequate care for the animals. In our prior ordinances, were very sort of ambiguous as to the level of care that that a person owning an animal in the city was required to have. I know this probably seems a little bit over the top and in detail. I do think that if you read it collectively, it is sort of a common sense approach to animal care, just written very, very explicitly. And so really just wanting to make sure that anyone that has animals, is making sure that they have proper food, drink, shelter, veterinary care if needed, sanitary conditions, which also goes into some of these neighbor issues we see with these animals. And then really just sort of expanding what it means to neglect or abandon animals.
We'll move to approve ordinance 1838-2025.
Second.
Under discussion, I have two very quick ones. One is, again, I'm not an attorney, although I did sleep in a Holiday Inn last night. So yeah, you'd have to know your television commercials on that one. Is there a reason why we use the term neglect? And the reason I ask that is, again, I could be missing something, but I was looking at the state laws on this. They use the term cruelty and not neglect. And what we would normally consider neglect, the lack of minimal care of, food, shelter, veterinary care, that's actually covered under what they call cruelty. And does it cause an issue if we use different terminology than the state?
I mean, if you look at our list of cruelty to animals, willful neglect is under there.
Okay.
And so I think that, we consider neglect a form of animal cruelty. We just expand what it means to neglect
Okay.
an animal.
I'm good with that. And the second one, is Chief Ashbeck on?
Hello, yes, I'm here.
Awesome. So this is going to be a comment that I'm thinking might make your officers' jobs easier. So I'd be interested in your opinion on it. This is on the bottom of page 42, which would become neglected or abandoned animals under the new B, where it talks about animals in motor vehicles. No person may leave an animal in a parked vehicle when temperatures inside the vehicle may adversely affect the animal's health and welfare. Et cetera, et cetera. So it's kind of ambiguous. I mean, I could see somebody calling the police saying that they think that this would adversely affect the animal's health because of the certain temperature, and the person who has the animal in the car could say, well, I don't think it does. And it would be up to a law enforcement officer and potentially a court to determine, well, did it or didn't it? So I did some research. I could not find a government source, but I saw all kinds of animal rights groups and veterinary sites. They all pretty much have a consensus of the ambient temperature outside being 70 degrees or less. I only found one that had a minimum temperature, and that was freezing. All the others had nothing, but it was very clear on 70 degrees or less. I mean, everybody was saying the same thing, no matter what site I went to. And I went to at least half a dozen. They were all identical of 70 degrees or less. If it's over 70 degrees, it becomes dangerous for the pet. So I'm thinking that kind of clarity, if instead of saying may adversely, if we just say no person may leave an animal in a parked vehicle when the outside temperature is above 70 degrees. And then I guess we can discuss whether they want to have a minimum or not. I mean, I will tell you, animals are pretty robust when it comes to cold weather, but yeah, go ahead.
It was below that threshold yesterday. We removed animals from a vehicle. 10 were dead, 9 were living.
I'm sorry, you said what now?
We removed animals from a vehicle just yesterday. 10 were dead, 9 were living. The ambient
Dead?
temperature was below 70 degrees. And so you really have to evaluate these on a case by case basis.
You said 10 were dead.
10 were dead.
How long were they left in that vehicle?
It's,
It must have
it's,
been like all day.
it's it was not a good situation. Let's just say that. And it was very clear you could see that into the vehicle. But I don't want to get hung up on a temperature here. I think that is the most often use of this ordinance, right? Would be a temperature situation. But, you know, in that situation, they were in such a small enclosure within that vehicle and then wrapped in a blanket so that nobody would hear them. And so those particular factors, you know, caused a different result. And so I don't know that we can just say that it's on a temperature basis.
So Chief, does the more ambiguous definition, are you comfortable with that? Or would you rather have something for your officers to know this is what it is?
I think we are used to working with more ambiguous parameters, officers' discretion, because just as Amanda had pointed out, there are certain circumstances where it may be considered more dangerous. And so that gives us a little more latitude. And oftentimes we may contact the Humane Society animal control officer as well. And so they'll get involved. So we
So
kind of have our resident expert.
Okay, do you determine then based off of the distress of the animal, like heavy panting and all that, or? I mean, because I mean, I would think if it's below 70 degrees, if you went in a grocery store for 15 minutes, you are incurring no risk whatsoever, according to the sites I saw. So I'm wondering how long they left these animals in there. You know, so are you looking at the distress level of the pet to make a determination too, or how do you do that?
Correct. Yeah, we're looking at all those factors. You know, is it cloudy? Is it sunny? Are there windows down, you know, slightly or not? Any of those conditions. I believe we do have a temperature gauge that we can bring out, and like a laser temperature gauge that we can shoot in there to see what the inside temperature is.
Yeah, I'm
So
aware of those. Okay, so you're comfortable with it as is?
correct.
All right. Any other comments?
Say that, you know, my car has a thermometer inside when I get in there. And if my car has been sitting outside and it's been 70 degrees all day long and sits in the sun, it could be 90 degrees in the car when I get in there. So as an animal sitting in a vehicle at 70 degrees all day, you know, it sounds like this was a really extreme circumstance.
had to
but
be.
that's the circumstance that we're concerned about, right? That it's not necessarily the person that brings their dog with them and has to run in to grab a prescription or something. So my comment would be, if you have to run into the store, just leave your pet home. But
Okay, any other comments? Larry?
Larry, you gotta press.
There's, on page 42, section 3. Why is that all scratched out?
The outdoor standards?
Yeah,
Because we moved those. They're all up in the first part.
okay. Thank you, Chair.
Any other comments? Okay, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. All right, we already did item 14, and we're moving on to the finance section here, and we are on to item 15, the 2025 General Fund Center financials, and we are over to Sabrina.
Thank you. So in your packets on page 49 is the general fund financials. It looks a little different for the last, gosh, it feels like forever, but for like the last month, we've been going through a data conversion to a new ERP system. So these are the reports out of the new system. So you will notice a little bit of change in the reporting. Still the correct numbers, just looks a little different. So starting on page 49 is the revenue and expense summary. If I can draw your attention to page 50, this tells us our total year-to-date revenues. Our total year-to-date revenues are $10,865,092.98, of which we have 10.08% remaining to hit our total budgeted revenues. I'm very confident that we will hit those budgeted revenues. A lot of amounts that we have not received revenue in yet are state aids that we will continue to receive payments for. We get a rather large payment in November, so that will be coming. And then a couple other items that we will receive state funding for as well. As of August 31st of 2024, we had 12.83% remaining for budgeted revenue. So we're actually ahead of where we were at in 2024. Our total revenue, our total interest income through August 31st was $694,857.37. Of that, obviously, a portion of that is the Dana Investments that was presented tonight, but then also we have other funds that sit in money market accounts just at local banks here in the city where if you're like, well, why is that number larger? That's because of that. We do, if you have money in a money market account right now, you're still getting 3 to 4% interest. So that's why that number is higher than the number that was presented tonight. Then if you can continue on in your packets, kind of towards the end of the revenue and expense summary, which I believe is page 64. Yes, page 64. Our total year-to-date expenditures is $7,546,277.13, of which we have 37.55% remaining. As of August 31st of 2024, we were at 39%. So we're pretty close to where we were at in 2024 for expenses. Then following the revenue and expense summary is the balance sheet. From our new system, it looks a little different. I don't love the font. That was one of the things when we were going to the new system, I was like, I don't really love the reports, but I love the system. So it is a little different. I'm still kind of working through some of the reporting. So it may look different next month if I can find a better report, but numbers are accurate. That's where we're at for the balance sheet as of August 31st of 2025.
Yeah, a bit of a different format. So you did it here, so I'm happy, but I definitely think, on the previous report formats, it compared to previous years, so we could kind of see if we were on glide path or not. As long as you mention it, like you did, I'm happy with that.
Yeah, I don't think the prior report had the same exact columns for the revenue and expenses. They were the exact same. So that is the same. It's just the balance sheet looks a little different. The budget worksheet that you receive for the budget, that'll be next week. That will include prior year information.
And just so when I'm looking at these, for instance, it's got year-to-date balance, normal versus abnormal. What is abnormal compared to? How do we know it's abnormal?
So normal, what abnormal means is that like we've actually gone over. So it's just an overage in the expense instead of it's like the variance being a good variance versus abnormal being a bad variance.
So for instance, on the balance sheet, the very first line where it says cash abnormal, 1,875,815. That's, I assume, from having to spend from surplus accounts for like the fire truck, et cetera.
Yep, and we have pooled cash. So if I gave you a pooled cash report, you would see that we actually have a positive cash. It's just right now the general fund, the way the pooled cash is working is a negative.
Okay.
But yeah.
Kathy, you have anything?
Nope.
Okay. I move to file the Financial report or general fund.
A second.
Discussion. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Item number 16, Omni Center financials.
So next in your packets on page 67 is the Omni Center financials through August 31st of 2025. Total revenues being at $585,077.36, of which we have 27.61% remaining to hit our total budgeted revenues. I know they are have put the ice back in, so I think that will help get them closer to hitting their total budgeted revenues by the end of the year. As of August 31st of 2024, they had 20.63% remaining, so they're a little behind where they were at in 2024. As for expenses, if I can draw your attention to page 68, the total year-to-date expenditures is $560,495.64, of which they have 31.52% remaining to hit their total budgeted expenses. As of August 31st of 2024, we had 29.78%. So we're ahead of where we were at for expenses, but we're a little behind of where we were at for revenues if we're comparing to 2024. Following that, on page 69 is the balance sheet for the Omni Center through August 31st of 2025.
I'll move to file.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Item number 17, proposed 2026 fee schedule.
So I guess I can start here, and if Amanda or anybody else has anything to add. So every year, we send out the proposed fee schedule to all of the departments, and they make changes to the fee schedule. There is a column for proposed change. Those items are in red. But I guess we'll take any questions that you have, but these are just the proposed changes from 2025 going into 2026.
I'll move to approve.
A second.
Right, I honestly, I mean, these are all minor changes and,
The main change would be adding all the columbarium costs, which we worked with Jared to get that all added. Otherwise, a lot of the other changes were some cleanup items, and then kind of smaller increases in
it's a
general.
Dash center.
Yep.
gym
Yeah.
Stuff that's new too.
Last year, obviously, we didn't know exactly how the Dash Center would operate, and so we made some, best guesses, and even, Dan's not here tonight, but even, Dan sort of indicated we're still sort of figuring this out, so you could still see differences next year to the fee schedule. We're just sort of trying out, what works best, hourly, half day. So this is what he wanted to give a try moving forward.
And then if I could just add a huge thank you to Rebecca, who's Amanda's paralegal, who kind of gathers all of this and puts it together for us. It saves me and my staff a lot of time because I know she spends a lot of time on getting this together. So.
Well, I guess, is there any other discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Item number 18, adjournment. Kathy, would you like to make a motion?
Motion to adjourn.
I'll second. Well, any discussion?
All in favor?
All in favor? Aye. We are adjourned at 6:35.